very similar to some of the Scramble City commercials that were occurring at the time. The landscape manga, which tells a story of Walter Magnus Jr. was the son of all and they would all combine and be able to scramble into any parts. He lines that up to 2010, and then in level 6 there's another time warp, and the time warps are vertical. And it goes back to 1986. The lore at this time was very loose, and the developer, he was given some material to use, but he didn't really have. There's an assumption that it was one guy, but there's no confirmation of that yet. So the release of this game was in 1986, and to consider the quality of this game and the power of this game, you should consider all of the other games that came out around the same time. A quote from Displaced Gamers is, whenever a game came out in the retail lifespan of a console, it's very important to understand its entry in the library S and what time it came into the library of games. So around this time, I'd like to point out that Super Mario Bros. 2, Castlevania, Aftermath of Dracula, and Seikima 2 were video games that were all released at the time, and I can see some of their elements appear in this game. For example, in Super Mario Bros. 2, you have the death mushroom, and of course the whole game itself is a lot more difficult than the first one. And this death mushroom was a power-up, but it was a power-down. A little bit of a unique concept, and Transformers History Convoy included that with a D power-up, or a generation.
Speaking of the warps in Mario Bros. 2, that just taking backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's our version of time warp, except it's your time that's being warped because it's been wasted.
Just to make the game more difficult. There was also influence of like arcade games, because that was kind of a thing at the time. It's like Donkey Kong. It was very difficult. The intention was to get more and more quarters out of the pockets. Okay, so Hiroshi Okamoto-san. Is he the main programmer? We're not sure. There's no credits to anyone on the video game. And there was one article online, but it's since been taken down. You can only see it through an internet archive. The website's called Anime X Japan. It's a blog about a video game developer. A video game developer who wrote this blog. And he comments on one of his blogs that he had worked for Locomotive Games, and he had worked for the president of Locomotive Games, Hiroshi Okamoto. They met up sometime after the fact, and he asked him about Mystery Convoy, to which Hiroshi Okamoto responded, and didn't seem very conscious of the original Transformers story or the plot. He isn't particularly interested in games, but he seems like a really nice guy, and when I found him on the web a while ago, it said that he was posting things like interpersonal training seminars. So that's interesting. He seems to be quite a professional. He's the head of quite a few companies, and he's moving from industry to industry. From looking at the code behind the game, I can see he's not particularly a game programmer, but he is very proficient in 6502 programming. In the 1970s and 80s, 6502 Intel chips and the language that was used in it was very common in all kinds of computers, calculators, and video game consoles, including the Nintendo Entertainment System. So just being very proficient in 6502 assembly, I think he took on the challenge to take on this Transformers game and develop it for Takara. This is actually the first of 10 games that was commissioned by Takara. Which was very interesting because they were never in the gaming market before, but they decided to use Transformers, their successful franchise at the time, to jump into this really hot video game market. Also, I have Eastward Transmetals up here because it was partially developed by Locomotive Games, which was the company that Hiroshi Okamoto started. He wasn't credited with developing anything in the game, but he was given special thanks in the credits. this is all just hints as to whether or not he actually developed the Mystery of Convoy game. So as far as we know, this is the only information we have to prove why.
This is the real mystery of Convoy.
Who the hell made this?
I reached out to him many times, and I also reached out to NAX to get a follow-up on these things, but I haven't heard any response. I mean, it was about a year ago, and I emailed them a couple of times. Hiroshi Okamoto is incredibly hard to find online. I emailed a company that he worked for, hoping that I could maybe get a connection to him, and I just haven't had a response. And same thing with him. So to go into some of the development I did to figure out this game, I didn't know any 6502 language. It's an old language, it's assembly language, it's completely outdated. I do have a background in computer languages, but when we use modern computer languages, it automatically converts into assembly and machine code so that we never need to see it or need to know what it's doing or understand it whatsoever. But during COVID, I had an opportunity to explore that curiosity. And I started by watching a couple of videos by Displaced Gamers and NES Hacker, who are obviously career programmers. And they had some tutorials on how to get started in programming. There was also an NES Hacker website, neshackers.com, and they also had a tutorial on how to understand the programming and functions in games. From scratch, I started line by line using an emulator. On the top right is FCPUX. Within this Nintendo emulator, there's a debugging module, and it breaks down the code, but it's not perfect. The way it works is assembly language reads from hexadecimal, and this hexadecimal language translates to operations and opcodes. And sometimes there's just some data in there, so the functions look for a certain section within this code, and they just use it as, let's say, the color palette, or they use it as the backdrop or layout of the level. It's not actually functional code. So this program doesn't actually decipher between the data and the functions, so that was all done manually. So through Displaced Gamers' tutorial on how to set up this program, VS Code on the computer, which I'm familiar with using for programming websites and the like, I've installed an NES compiler so that I can use 6502 assembly and compile the game directly out of this program. 10,000 lines of code later, I have finally replicated the game, but in a readable language, because otherwise it's just numbers, ones and zeros. But now it's in a readable language where you can see the functions, and I'm able to now manipulate the game. For example, hitboxes, enemy strengths, where enemy placements are, and everything else. In the bottom right, I'll also explain this is a character designer. So in the NES cartridge, it has a program memory as well as a character memory. In the Mystery of Convoy game, this is actually particularly large for its time. It's 32 kilobytes of program memory and 32 kilobytes of graphics memory, which is wow for its time. I think all of Super Mario Bros. Was in 32 kilobytes itself. So the graphics was edited in this UYGLZ program. It's a Japanese program with very little translation in English. So with a little bit of difficulty and effort, I made some changes to the graphics and updated some things where I felt I could. Because I'm able to do this on a computer, I'm able to expand the limitations of the chip size. So in fact, I've added a number of banks. Each bank is 16 kilobytes in this chip. So as it stands, this game has 2 banks of graphics memory. I've added an additional 6, which can give me that many more levels, characters, enemies, and bosses. So I'm going to quickly play the game. If you guys haven't seen it before, this is really one of the most terrible games for Nintendo. And you'll quickly see why.
Great music sound.
This is the Transformers 2010 music, and they just decided to include it here. At the bottom is also FNG. That's a variation of this game. There's two variations of the game. One says copyright Takara, one says copyright FNG. Not particularly sure who that is, and that's the only difference between the two variations of the game.
I kind of feel like after that running forwards and not doing anything was a viable strategy.
That flashing lights, that was just a common thing at the time. Like it was expression of something or other.
Wow.
Not easy.
It's one of those Contra type one things.
At least Mega Man had health more.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to think I'm actually good at this game considering I played it so much.
You're in a live environment, it's kind of changes the game.
So that's kind of the experience. That's kind of everyone's experience, and there's a lot of response online, a lot of reviews online saying this is the absolute worst game. When it was released again, I think it was in 2005 for Wii Virtual Console, it just got the worst reviews across the board, and I believe it was taken off Wii Virtual Console around 2011. Really quick, let's just see what changes I've made in order to make this a little bit more playable. So the hitboxes, in order to hit the enemy, the missile seems to go right by it. A little bit different music if you recognize this.
Oh, how'd you get that going?
So there's, in the program, there's a function to deal with the audio. And it seems to be pre-made. It doesn't seem to be the same writing style as the rest of the game. So what I would assume, and this happens a lot, is that a programmer would take an existing function, like the 6502 audio function to be used for any computer, and it used 4 of the 5 channels that was available for the NES console. There's 2 pulse waves, a square wave, and a triangle wave. The triangle wave would typically be your drums, the pulse waves would typically be the melody, and square waves would be the bass type of thing. There's also the DMC channel, which would take samples, but this was not used at all. It takes a lot of memory in the program, and to save space, it was just completely left out and didn't use any sample channels. This is common for a lot of games. So using this, I obviously reverse engineered the program of the audio function and figured out how it programs the notes, the lengths of the notes, how it goes back and repeats it. And there's some additional quirky functions like a slide, because it could make the audio of a pulse wave slide up to a higher note or slide down to a lower note. And yeah, took a long while, but I was the composer of that intro music.
Oh, nice.
So this is the Mystery Convoy updated game that I've done. This is a demo playing right now. There's a little bit of changes in the layout of the level. The color scheme of some of the characters has changed. There is a health bar on the very top, and there's no more downgraded power-ups. So really quick, let's go into it just to see what I've done.
I swear that flash is less painful too.
I shortened that just as much as now. So most enemies are down with power-ups. There's no shortage of power-ups in this game. The key power-up gives you double shot.
Wow.
There was one that I just missed, and that one I also missed. So this one gives you rod and sliders. If you get the whole game, if you finish the game and you got all the rod and sliders, you actually are able to play the rod-ups.
That's the original too.
Yeah.
It's just a
In the new one, playing as rod-ups is part of the progression of the game. In the original game, there was no end to it. It would just loop and loop and loop, and you would start again at the beginning. And you wouldn't notice, probably not, because rarely did anyone continue the game in the beginning after finishing it. Most people would just say, okay, finally, I finished it after all that time.
Most people be happy to get past the first level.
there was an increasing difficulty every single time you played the game. So some seekers would get faster, enemy bosses would fire at a quicker rate, and even some bosses would fire that didn't fire before. One in particular would be Azur. Azur was a character that looked a lot like Soundwave, and he would pop out of the ground, but he wouldn't do anything. It seemed like what kind of a boss or enemy is this? Like they're just standing there, I can shoot you down. But if you play the game at least 3 times, he starts shooting at you, which seems like that was the intended way.
I don't know if we have to have background music, it's not bad, huh?
We like it.
This music is really fun. I actually like this music because it gets stuck in my head.
Notice how he didn't die immediately after that guy ran into him?
There was a show in Japan called Q Transformers, and they showcased this video game quite a bit in there. And the reason was there was an Android release for the video game. It was an Android version, but it was related to the Q Transformers show and toys. And then you could play as some of the Q Transformers in this video game. Within the game, there's a very strange quirk, and this is something, it took some time, but I believe I figured it out. There's a secret hidden level in one of the time warp rooms, one of the vertical stages, and in this time room, you fight against a boss that you can't hit, but he drops bricks, and when you shoot these bricks, it becomes energon. In the original game, the energon doesn't really count for anything except for points. But this character is very peculiar and it doesn't appear anywhere else. So over time, and on TFWP, there was a lot of discussion. They found that there was a mention of him in a strategy guide calling him a strange uncle. If you go into the secret room, you'll find a strange uncle.
The important thing here is he's just a regular human guy with a pickaxe. He's not a robot. There's just some dude out there
fighting robots. So in Japanese, strange uncle, it would actually translate to, it could also translate to strange old man, Oji-san. And so it's unclear whether it's a strange uncle or just a strange old man. But the Meiji food company, for a long time, they had these snacks, they were called curl snacks. It was like curl chips, and their mascot of this was called Uncle Curl, or also Uncle Carl. And the likeness of this character, as well as the jingle that he plays, is too similar to be overlooked as a coincidence for him to be included in the game. Why is he in the game? We don't know. That's a mystery. There was no collaboration between Takara and Meiji at the time. I can only assume that the programmer had a liking for this jingle character because he was a beloved character. When the commercials come on, the kids in Japan used to sing along with the cartoon. Yeah, it was one of those things that was a traditional character. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this. This is a compilation of all the commercials, just so you can get an idea of some of the songs that were in there and that also were appearing in the video game. So this is the jingle you would hear in that strange level. So one would assume that there is some connection. In the past year, unfortunately, Meiji had to pull back some of their Carl snacks in Japan just because of their rate of sales. However, if you're in Okinawa, you can still get it because they're manufacturing and selling it over there.
Is this the most abstract Transformers merchandise you could buy? There he is, by the way.
So this is our Uncle Carl depiction. That's his level there, and his likeness in the commercials.
Looks like a rejected Ice Climbers character.
So in the TFWP, they call him the Pickaxe Man, and yeah, it definitely looks like one of those prospectors, I would say, yeah. Climbing rocks and ice, looking for gold. Okay, some content for the game. This is just things I found looking through the code and that was unused. So each enemy has a designated number, whether it's 1 through 28 or whatever. If you change the number of the enemy that's on screen in the hexadecimal code live, you can actually get a different enemy. So by doing that, constantly going through each number, I found some of the enemies that were unused in the game. In the top right of these unused sprites, this is actually the enemy LiDAR, which appeared in the promotional commercial, and they had an animation of it, like a drawing of it, but it didn't actually appear in the final game, although another character was given the name LiDAR. Mistakenly, I assume.
I read it as a giant enemy crab.
The enemies in the game only appear in the levels, and there's also boss enemies. So a level enemy, stage enemy cannot appear in a boss level, and vice versa, a boss enemy cannot appear in a stage. In the middle of this cut sprites is a fire wheel which would spin and would fire bullets out, and it was almost impossible to get by. It was impossible to kill. There was no number of hits it would take before it dies. And you had to compete with this as well as the boss. This would appear in a couple of levels, particularly in the second boss, which had the 2 devil stars. Just made it incredibly difficult. But in the final game, this enemy didn't appear. There's also a laser beast to the right who would have a different flight path and would fire directly at the player, but didn't appear in the final game, although there was a laser beast that did appear.
I look at that and I see unrealized regain potential.
I just see Sunder.
You know?
The bottom middle is Snow Commander, which he's a character in the game, but this is a stationary version of Snow Commander. The one that does appear, sits across the screen, doesn't fire anything, but this one stays stationary and fires bullets. The one to the bottom left is completely unknown. This is the only one that doesn't have a program to it. It doesn't have any functions. There's nothing in the game telling it how it moves or what it shoots. The only thing that was there is the graphics, which is what we see here. Also, the blue color is just an interpretation. There was no color palette, so I just assumed it was using the Ultraman's color palette. So the rest of these image is, I want to call this content because there's no Devastator in the game, but there's other combiners. And the Devil Star, which appears as the first level boss and second level boss, is, okay, it could be a Death Star at the time. Star Wars was hot. Planetary bases were very cool, so to include one in the game, that's pretty cool, but I've never seen one in Transformers lore before. But if you consider the Japanese name for Devastator, which is Devastator, one could assume that it has some kind of connection to the Devil Star that we see in the actual game. It's my contention, and this is just speculation, is that there was an intention to have Devastator in the game, but because he's all green or mostly green, and there's just so much detail in it, it was almost impossible to depict him in the graphics that we had seen at the time. He was also a figure that was carried over from the previous year, and they were also wanting to push the newer desktops as well. So it may have been okay for the developers to just drop him as a character in the game. Here, this is just a shot of the Q Transformers, this is the first episode, and in the first episode they were talking about this Transformers Mystery of Convoy video game. As a matter of fact, I think it was Optimus Prime's cell phone ringtone was that theme song of the video game. So, If anyone's seeing angry video game nerds, he tends to poo-poo on the games, but in the best way possible, and took the opportunity to make such words on the Transformers Mystery of Convoy game.
Where's TJ Omega?
Yeah. So he absolutely trashed the game. Yeah, so it was a terrible game. It was also Game Grumps played it, and Proto Man game. He played it with Wendell. And if you watch that, you can constantly hear Wendell telling the game over code. If you have a game over, you can press E to start, and that gives you a continuation. Every 5 or 10 minutes, Wendell's A B side, A B side, A B side. So to go forward in the future, the game had very little lore by way of the original developer. Some of the enemies were very strange. You would assume some of the flying characters might have been Insecticons, as they're insectoid-looking things. As a matter of fact, in the manga with Shunichi and Ultraman Jr., they were attacked by Insecticons. In the final game, they're called mechanoid life forms, and they come from the planet Energo. And the idea is that they're organic beings, but they do have a mechanic aspect to them. And the Decepticons, or the Destrons, had found them, and they've combined their forces and become ultra powerful by using this technology from Energo. Moving forward in the future, we have the Biotech Transformers and Alterity series, which they did have their own story, but it was only written on the box or in the instructions, and it didn't really appear outside of that.
There was some manga too.
There was some manga. And even still today, all of the stories on the boxes haven't been translated. We have maybe 12 out of the 20 that have been translated. So the Biotech is a very interesting story. It starts to offshoot into something completely different, Transformers, and it flows into the Alterity series. And the Alterity series kind of takes a loop back and retroactively tells the story about the Mystery of Convoy video game.
Alterity is typically about like hyper-dimensional warriors, like the version of Megatron. There's like many Megatrons together, traveling through space and time, fighting Optimus that travels through a lot of space and time. It was weirdly complicated and cosmic for alignment, mostly just involved like licensed cars.
There was a very cool one as well, the one in the middle is a Mitsuo Orochi Starscream, which was an exclusive car to Japan.
This guy here just keeps holding up.
Well, that's the Ultra Magnus.
Oh, that's the Ultra Magnus, okay.
Transform it. Transform it.
So many cars with the same speed, I'm very bad at that.
No, not yet.
Yeah, so the idea was there was a manga that came out, and it told the story of a hyperdimensional Optimus and a hyperdimensional Megatron battling each other, but deciding instead they were going to have a contest. And Megatron says, choose a champion. And Optimus is like, all right, I choose Ultra Magnus. And Megatron's like, I'm going to send my waves of enemies against you. It's going to be a very challenging, very deadly game that we're going to play. And they didn't say it was Mystery of Convoy, and when it initially came out, not everybody realized it, but then people started to notice the imagery, like that beat at the beginning of the game where you see like the 3 orbs go down into Ultra Magnus, that was present in there. And they realized they were turning Mystery of Convoy into a story about these 2 godlike versions of Optimus and Megatron playing this game of domination. The name of the manga is called To Die Game. Yes.
And I think in there, Megatron gave Optimus 100 lives of Ultra Magnus.
Yeah.
100 opportunities to defeat all of his enemies. And
So it sort of means you, the player, when you play the game, you are Optimus Prime trying to beat Megatron's contest.
so there'll be a playable demo In the back of the dealer room, we have a table of children of Primus in the what used to be the old artist alley. In the very back, not the final table, but the second to last table.
Right next to where the TFCon one is.
We have a little arcade booth set up over there where you can get your game on. We have a Nintendo controller hooked up to a retro Pi to simulate the original experience. But expected to have it this December, this Christmas, I would like to have this game developed on an NES cartridge, and that's all looking good this year. So if you want to follow along, you can go to decepticity.com. We have subscriber email, so you can keep up to date with the new events and what's going on with the development of the game. And also check out childrenpromise.com, where we have reviews, news, and we also do videos. And the blog reviews is written by Anthony here. I would encourage you to go there and check our website out, and check out our booth in the back of the dealer room.
We also stream every Sunday. It's more than just the two of us, and I usually have more to say than the occasional interjection.
That's the mystery of Convoy. That's the development of where it's at right now. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm so detailed that you can answer everything you might want to know.
I have a question.
Yes, you will.
I have a question. What is the degree to which that you can actually alter the game? Like, if you want, can you make like? I know you're playing with like the constraints of the technology of the system, right? Like, but considering that with what you have to work with, can you make like new bosses? Can you make new bad guys? Can you alter the graphics of the altering this character himself? Can you like how far can you go with actually altering things?
That's a really good question.
I'm curious, yeah.
That's a really good question, and that was my first goal, is to find out, like, what are the limits of that? So the program limits, it's 32 kilobytes. Unfortunately, that's not expandable. So the space of how many enemy functions, like the way enemies move, I can't add new movements to enemies. Like, the space is essentially used out. What I've done in order to conserve space is I maybe compressed some things or removed some things that weren't really necessary or things that didn't appear to be. And I added some functions. For example, there was that power bar. There was a shield bar, so you can pick up a shield, and that's it's visible instead of just you having to guess how many things you have left. Also, in the game, when you're going level to level, you can't take your power-ups with you. I've added that as well. All of these things just take a few lines of code, but it's still limited on space. It's very difficult. On the other side, there's the graphics. Now, I've expanded the graphics about from 32 to 120 kilobytes, so that gives me essentially that much more to use. However, it's only graphics data, and in order to call that graphics data on screen, I need to use something in the program memory itself. So I need to spare up a little bit more program memory in order to use some of this extra graphics data. So I'll tell you a little bit of the direction of the game. Is I did add a final boss. I did add 2 final bosses, because in the game there is a Triptychon as a final boss, which I thought was kind of weird, like it was making a megaphone or something. But Triptychon was the big bad of the Scramble City type of thing. And you pick up the story in Battletech. Part of the story of Battletech is Ultra Magnus goes up with Optimus Prime on an unknown mission. Optimus Prime commissions Ultra Magnus, come with me, and Optimus Prime sacrifices himself and gives the Matrix to Magnus. And he still doesn't know what the actual threat is and why he died and why he gave up the Matrix. But it's a looming threat of Unicron. They didn't talk about it yet, but the Unicron is actually involved in this game and the storyline and Battletech and all that. And in the final version of my game, what you're going to do in order to progress, you have to get all the Rodimus letters. You get Rodimus, you beat the game again with Rodimus. And as you're playing with Rodimus, you correct the Unicron letters. And the 2 final bosses in the game are going to be Unicron in planet mode and then Unicron in robot mode.
No way. That's awesome. Oh my god. Sweet. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, so,
In just
yeah, it's me. I got a chance to play the game a little bit earlier than most other people, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed actually being able to play the game, you know, as a proper game. But you're talking about adding new stuff to the game, and I'm wondering how you balance that, because I kind of feel like maybe some games, there's something wrong with them, and if we fix that, then it becomes more open for people to experience. But then if we change that experience, then it's something different. So how do you balance that?
That's a very good question, and I took that into consideration. As Hubert mentioned, or as I mentioned to Hubert, that it's very limited on the programming. If I want to add something, I have to take something away, and it's very difficult to do that while maintaining those functions. So, in order to keep the flavor of this game, I'm keeping it within those constraints. I'm keeping it within the 32 kilobyte program memory. I'm not changing too much. I don't want to change the graphics. Just make it a playable and enjoyable game as it is within its own flavor. I would like to change a lot of it if I were to make it in Unity or something like that. You know, I can add really nice graphics. It would feel really flowing. It would take up a lot more space, but I feel it would be a completely different game. I think for version 2, if I ever get around to making a sequel to this, I would like to develop it in much more animated style, in a larger size of the game. But this one in particular, I want to keep it as close to the original as possible, but making those slight subtle improvements wherever I can.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for playing my game online.
Yeah, sure.
And
It was good.
hey,
My question is, with your presentation, which was really well, how do you distribute the game, or how are you planning on distributing the game besides the NES copy?
that's a good question, right? So I really wanted to make an NES cartridge to have physically. It being a part of missing nostalgia that we didn't have this game in the West, it's just something that I feel should belong in my collection, an NES Transformers game. Today we're having a demo in our booth. You can play it, and sometime during the day you can go to receptative.com and you can download a demo where you can play it at home.
Thank you.
Also, distributing the game, you know, we'll be selling this physical cartridge, and that will be coming along with a digital version as well. But the demo will be available on receptative.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Good. Let me show.
Thank you. So, as mentioned in the original game, you can collect the Rodimus letters and become Rodimus Prime. However, something you forgot to mention is it didn't change the physical player character, it just changed the colors of them and the vehicle mode sprite itself. Is it physically possible to add a new sprite for Rodimus's robot mode, or does it always have to be just a palette swap?
No, we can completely add a new Rodimus mode, which I started working on, but the graphics are so small, the changes are so subtle. There is a palette swap I could mention I did. So between player 1 and player 2, you're actually playing as the same character. So in order to differentiate that, I made them the diachrome colors.
Delta Magnus, smart,
Delta
smart.
Magnus, yeah. And also the Rodimus is Shattered Glass Rodimus is player 2.
Yeah,
Come by and check out, you'll see the changes I made to some of the characters.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Any other questions?
This is some weird question. Have you ever played any other Transformer game on the phone, PC, or on like other place? Just try to see how the other game will feel like. Very much.
If I played other Transformers games to see how it differentiates from...
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of them are very bad. A lot of them are terrible.
I mean, yeah, I played a lot of Transformer game on phone.
Yes.
And as a kid, I actually played the game, the Tactical Battle. That thing's fun, and then shut it down. Yeah, that one was it just disappeared really quickly. And then another one was the one that was like a card game on the phone. Like,
Legends, isn't it?
yeah, it's the one, yeah, Transformer Legend. The thing is the Legend, and they shut it down. now we got the one like a Clash Royale one. I try to stay away from those type of games. So it's kind of.
So this is why I think physical cartridges is a good thing. Even if this was somehow scrubbed from the internet, it will continue to exist.
Yeah. I mean, I like it talk about a lot. I mean, I like that game. I just don't know why they shut it down. I like it. Pretty much.
Me too. I feel the same way. Although they might be atrocious, I like it for what it is, especially the Mystery of Convoy. The Headmaster's game that came out on the Nintendo Disk System has some music that I might want to use in this game, but it had a completely different audio function, so I couldn't use any of it. And yeah, the graphics of the game and the game itself was just not appealing. So to connect this game to that one, I felt, yeah, no, they're two separate things.
What about Cybertron? We think about making one for Cybertron?
The Transformers Cybertron?
Yeah, that one's a pretty good one actually on the Xbox, PS4 stuff. It's pretty good.
War for Cybertron.
War for Cybertron.
Oh, actually both. Both.
War, Fall, and then Rise of the Darkspark, which is technically the third one.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the first time it was in ridiculously good. There were some others before that I liked, but yeah, it was
I have to shout out to Tatakai, Tatakai from PlayStation 2. Oh, I never seen your bullet that game.
that was like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a great game. And I'm not a video game developer. I kind of do programming for fun.
Okay.
I took biology in university, and everything I do with regards to technology is a hobby and for enjoyment. So if I learn something, I immediately get a reward out of it because I'm always applying to whatever I'm working on, right?
Okay.
Moving forward in the future, I would like to do more video games. Like I
Okay.
mentioned, I'd like to make a sequel to this that's a little bit more animated. If that really pans out and I get really good at it, I definitely love to do Transformers Tentakai, Transformers War for Cybertron, but in a retro type of style.
Okay.
Very much.
I'm just a gamer.
You're a gamer, right?
Yeah, I'm a gamer.
Right on.
I play World of Warship. There it goes. Transformers World Warship have a collab. There it goes. I like it. So yeah.
How did you feel about the Mystery of Convoy game?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, you like it, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I play a lot of Transformer game. I mean, a lot of them disappeared. Wow. I mean, there's now another one is the Clash Royale. That one. And it burned my phone. I just played one game round, like, oh, my phone's burning really hard. Just not. As I had to let my phone sit there for 10 minutes to cool down and play one more round, and then my phone started burning again. It's got a weird thing out though. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Transformers Devastation is the best Transformers game, and you
Oh
can
yeah, that one.
Yeah, thank you for showing that. Absolutely.
Did anybody ever play, there was one for the iPhone back in the day, it was called G1 Awakening. Yeah. It was like a Fire Emblem turn-based strategy thing before they did like the Cyberverse one. And I feel like I'm the only person that played the heck out of that. One of my very few contributions to the Transformers Wiki was sprucing up the article on that because I don't think anybody else cared except me. It was fun. It was small, it was simple, but it was fun. I probably can't get it anywhere now anymore. It was just, what if G1, but Fire Emblem, and kind of simplified.
And really quick while I have this open, I just want to show you some of the work that I did in order to get this done. I literally wrote every line by line, completely by hand. I would look at the NAS emulator, I would see that they have the debug code there, and I would look at it and think, is that part of the function or is that data? And I would try it out, and it took a lot of trial and error, because by the time I compiled the whole thing, I realized, some was data, but that I misinterpreted as functions, and some was the opposite. So every line I annotated as well as I could, so I could make changes, I could come back to it and see what changes I made. I made a log at the very top where I have a number of changes so far. These are all just additions and changes, it's not a complete list. And then I've also added kind of a reference to certain places in RAM. These places are normally arbitrary, but they all have a specific purpose, like storing the player one score, but the low number, the mid number, the high number, the player speed, the current level, how any power-ups, etc., etc. All of this has been annotated so that I can make changes moving forward.
How many lines of code did you end up with?
So the original game itself, it's about 10,000 lines of code.
Wow, that's a lot. How long did it take?
Almost TIFF level.
Almost 3 months.
Oh,
And I had no knowledge of 6502 assembly at the time.
did it really hurt typing like that much, or just copy pasting some of those?
I have a really, yeah, I would get carpal tunnel syndrome, but I have a really nice keyboard setup. I do a lot of typing. So yeah. Fortunately, no carpal tunnel for that. But the edited game actually has 1,300 lines of code. It's not that I've added 3,000 additional lines. That maybe I added annotations. I've spaced things out, but I did add as much code as I possibly could while taking out some of the junk data. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Come visit our booth. We have a demo. We have a bunch of stuff for sale. We bring a bunch of nice little things.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
I put out some amiibos today on top of my robots, so schematic.
Yeah. Awesome.
Back to work.